What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name is Kyle. In this video, we're going over my 2022 tight end rankings. We're going to be using the tiers that I have here on the right, and I'll be kind of just drafting these guys and making my list of rankings here on the right. Now, if you want to get access to my 2022 projections document and as well as the 2022 draft kit, there's a link in the description below that's going to get you access to, here, let me show you. You're going to get access to a ton of stuff, my rankings, my projections, my entire Google Sheet, Excel document as well. You can see all the position tabs for projections, top 200, positional tiers, cheat sheets, and advanced data stuff, as well as a couple other things. So check out the 2022 draft kit, and let's get into it. Let's do this tight end rankings. And I think for me, it's pretty clear. There's kind of like a top five that is kind of locked in. And starting at the top, there's kind of a tier of Kelsey and Mark Andrews. I think for me, I really like what Mark Andrews did last year, but I just worry about the Ravens, going back to their roots and running the football a little bit more. We saw last year Mark Andrews have 154 targets. I think that number's coming down. Basically, just all of these numbers I think are going to trickle down a little bit as the Ravens get Lamar Jackson back, focus on the run a little bit more. And for me, I'm going to continue to take Travis Kelce as the first tight end off the board. And I think, honestly, he's probably worth like a number one ranking, to be fair, or a first round ranking, to be fair. You have to expect, with Tyreek Hill gone, he's going to be the focal point of that offense. And I just think he's as safe as they come. He's guaranteed to be tight end 1 or tight end 2 with Mark Andrews. There's a little bit of play there. So for me, I'm willing to take Travis Kelce at the back end of the first round of full PPR drafts. And then as far as Mark Andrews, I still love him, but he's more of a round 2 target for me, where if you want to get a tight end early, everyone knows Mark Andrews is going to be a safe and steady target. He's kind of the number one receiver in that offense. So I have no problem with Mark Andrews as the second tight end off the board. But again, he's still a little bit below Travis Kelce for me. And then I think there's kind of a clear ADP drop. I'm going to pull up the Fantasy Pros ADP here. And let's just take a look and see what other websites are ranking these tight ends. I'm going to hit PPR scoring. So they do have Travis Kelce ranked as the 13th overall player. This is using ESPN. I don't know what RT Sports is. Fantrax, FFC, and Sleeper. He's the clear number 1 tight end, and Mark Andrews is the clear number 2 tight end. Now, for the most part here, all these sites rank Kyle Pitts as the number 3 tight end, and I have to agree with him. Last year, Kyle Pitts, a little bit disappointing. He was still tight end number 6, though, on a end of the season basis. So I think that's his floor. When you take him, you're drafting him as probably the 3rd or the 4th tight end off the board. And you got to admit, 1,000 yards as a rookie tight end is pretty phenomenal. 68 receptions, only 1 touchdown. So I think we can guarantee he's going to catch more than 1 touchdown this year. So that could boost him, into the top 5. But for me, I'm going to continue to take Kyle Pitts. In most best ball sites, he's going in the 3rd round. And I think if you play on ESPN or Sleeper, you can get him in the 4th or the 5th. So I love Kyle Pitts. There's a really strong connection with Marcus Mariota. Mariota's always been good throwing the tight end. So I like Kyle Pitts as my tight end number 3. And then after that, I'm going to land into Darren Waller just because he's been a volume monster for the majority of his the last few seasons with Derek Carr. I know Devontae Adams is there, but man, he's still going to be getting a ton of volume. And I think in terms of ADP here, they actually have him as the 5th tight end, which I'm taking Waller over Kittle just because it's a heavy passing volume there in the Raiders system. And we know with Josh McDaniels, he's had a lot of fun and success with his tight ends in the past. So to me, Waller over Kittle, it's more of a volume play as well as a scheme play. I just think Waller in for another good season. I know he's not practicing or anything right now. He's got, I think it's a hamstring that they're being protective of him, but still, Darren Waller in the 4th or the 5th round seems like really good value. And then after that, I think the de fact, number 5 tight end is going to be George Kittle for me. He's being drafted anywhere in the 5th. Sometimes he falls into the 6th round, but you got to think young rookie. Technically, it's his first season starting with Trey Lance, so it's probably going to rely on a lot of George Kittle in a lot of situations. And we know Kittle can explode at almost any given moment. He might be the best overall tight end in terms of his blocking and his receiving game combined. Kittle, can't go wrong with George Kittle in the 5th round. So that's the top 5 tight end rankings. And then after that, you see I have this next tier. And these guys I kind of view all as, almost every week they have top 5 upside, and who knows if there's an injury or 2 to the guys above, or they're just not getting touchdowns. I could see any one of these players finishing in the top 5 for this season. I think Dalton Schultz is kind of the clear number 6 guy off the board. They have him here as, the 6th tight end. He's 6'6", 6, 7, and 6. So he's kind of the clear guy here. I'm going to go ahead and lock Dalton Schultz in there. Just the the competition for targets is wide open there. After CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz is the number 2 preferred target for Dak Prescott this year, with Amari Cooper now on the Browns, and as well as Michael Gallup not being ready for the start of the season. And again, rookie Jalen Tolbert's there. I think Schultz is a safe play, not an exciting play, but he's going to be just a really dependable tight end for you, probably double-digit points every week, anywhere 4 to 6 catches per game. So I like Dalton Schultz as a safety blanket in this offense. And then after that, we got Hockenson, Ertz, and Goddard. Let's see what Fantasy Pros has to say. They have Hockenson as the tight end 7. There's Goddard, and then there's Ertz. And these guys are all kind of around the same, but it looks like they prefer Hockenson and Ertz, and then a clear distant Zach Ertz, or Hockenson, Goddard, and then a clear Zach Ertz number 3. I'm kind of in the same camp. I like TJ Hockenson last year. Hockenson, he still hasn't given us a full season, but last year he was tight end 15. Averaged a healthy 11.9 points per game. If I filter by points per game, that's going to put him as the tight end 7, and that's kind of his a good spot for him. I don't really love getting a lot of TJ Hockenson. I just think they added a lot of target competition, whereas last year there was basically none. He was kind of the number 1 target going into the year. But with Amon-Ra St. Brown emerging, DJ Chark added, and of course DeAndre Swift, Hockenson kind of not so much of a clear, number 2, number 3 target anymore. But I still think the upside of Hockenson there, and who knows, maybe the addition and the emergence of Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark could help lighten the load for TJ Hockenson and put him up there and have a really nice safe season. So for him, it's really the health situation that is the most concerning. But I do like Hockenson as a fringe top 5 tight end. I've been high on Zach Ertz for a while, but I think I need to get Dallas Goedert ahead of him in my rankings. Goddard, kind of the clear. It's interesting because adding AJ Brown is going to complicate things for Devonta Smith, and AJ Brown's going to lead the team in targets. That's really safe to say. But after that, between Goddard and Devonta Smith, you're looking at the number 2, number 3 targets for the Eagles offense. And I just think with the just tight end points are so hard to come by. Dallas Goedert, really strong player here. He showed up really well last year down the end of the stretch. So Goddard, to me, ranks as my number 8 player. And then I'm going to slide Zach Ertz into the number 10 spot. Now, I know people are like, Zach Ertz, number 9? Zach Ertz was a really good addition for the Cardinals last year. They struggled to have a tight end the last few seasons. Ertz came in there, played really well down the stretch. I think he had a monster amount of targets towards the end of the year. Let's actually pull those numbers up. Zach Ertz, to end the season last year, he ended up with a ton of targets. You see 11, 13, 9, and 10. Not so hot in the playoff game, but he ended the season really strongly, and I think this could be something you see with DeAndre Hopkins missing the first 6 games. I mean, 7, 11, 13, 9, and 10. PPR games here the last 5 games. Really strong numbers, and he just needs the touchdowns to fall his way. I think Ertz, one of those guys, like if you miss the top 8, Ertz is going to be one of those guys you want to circle and just be sure where he's going to be drafted, because I think he could be a tight end that gets off to a hot start, especially in September and into October while DeAndre Hopkins is out. Now, after that, that's when projections and rankings get kind of wonky. You have a ton of guys here vying to crash the top 10 for fantasy tight ends, and I think I have to go with Dawson Knox as my next best tight end, because he's going to be that number 2, number 3 target in games there for Josh Allen. Stephon Diggs, the clear-cut number 1, but I think you're going to see probably Gabe Davis and Dawson Knox trade off games as being the 2nd or 3rd best target for Josh Allen. In terms of fantasy pros here, they do have Dawson Knox as the 10th, so we're kind of in alignment here with the consensus. And man, Knox got hurt a little bit last year. He didn't play a full season, but when he played, he was catching touchdowns. And I just think you want to be attached. You kind of want to attach your tight end to a strong quarterback that's going to throw a lot of touchdowns. So Dawson Knox, who knows? I have him at number 10. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up as a top 5 or top 6 tight end, if he ends up catching 9, 10 touchdowns. So I like the upside there. And with tight end too, like he's got a low floor, but if he's catching touchdowns and you wait on tight end, that's ultimately what's worth it at the end. But let's pivot and see fantasy pros they have coming off next off the board. Freiermuth, Gesicki, Cole Kmet, Hunter Henry, Noah Fant, David Njoku. I don't love any of these guys particularly. I think Pat Freiermuth with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, he was a favorite target of Ben Roethlisberger last year. I'm not really sure how he's going to fare with Trubisky and the other quarterbacks they have here. So I like him. I don't know if I love him. Gesicki, I'm kind of out on Gesicki. We'll probably rank him a little bit lower. I think he's going to get lost among Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle for targets. Cole Kmet, though, intriguing guy. This is a player here who last year, in terms of targets, He was 8th in targets with 93 receiving targets last year. That puts him in the top 10. If he gets the same amount of targets, probably a little bit more now that Allen Robinson's not there, and he hangs on to, 60 to 65 receptions, almost 700 yards. He didn't score a touchdown last year. He's going to score touchdowns this year. So I think Cole Kmet is an easy guy here that I think I'm excited to get. I'm going to put him here as my tight end 11. And this is just a volume play. I'm assuming he's going to be the number 2 target in that offense. They're probably going to have a lot of garbage time opportunities. So Cole Kmet, a guy worth taking a flyer on. My next tight end that I want to be higher on than consensus is going to be David Njoku. And I know Njoku finally got paid. No more Austin Hooper. He's going to be the tight end on the field the most for the Browns. And I know there's a huge QB, worry there with Jacoby Brissett. Maybe Deshaun Watson plays some this year. But either way, Jacoby Brissett has been a pretty tight end friendly quarterback for most of his career. So I think you're looking at a guy here who is relatively cheap. His ADP, down here at tight end 16, I think that's a really good bet for him to beat that. And I'm taking him over Noah Fant, Henry, and Gesicki and Freiermuth for sure. I think what we'll do next, though, is I want to get Pat Freiermuth in there. Again, he played phenomenally as a rookie. Not easy for tight ends to do. What did he end up with for touchdowns? He ended up with 7 touchdowns, almost 80 targets, 60 receptions, almost 500 yards. You're probably going to see these numbers increase. I think he can be a really nice, safe floor option for you each week. And who knows, he could lead the Steelers in touchdowns again this season. The next guy I want to be cautious about, it's going to be Irv Smith. I know he's had a lot of injury history. He's got a thumb issue that we're dealing with right now, but I think you got to think about that Vikings offense being similar to the Rams offense the last few years, where Tyler Higbee's had some monster games, the tight ends on the field a lot of tight end, 1 tight end sets, 3 receiver sets. Irv Smith could be a busy guy with targets, and I just think he's ready to break out this year as long as he stays healthy. My next guys that I want to get off the board, it's going to be Hunter Henry. Now, I don't love Hunter Henry. He's kind of a boom-bust touchdown play, but it's hard to ignore the touchdowns that he scored last year. In terms of touchdowns, he tied for the most touchdowns. There was 4 tight ends with 9 touchdowns, so he is kind of the preferred red zone target here. He's kind of up and down. He did average 10.3 fantasy points per game, but 50 receptions, 603 yards, a little bit low here. So he is one of those boom-bust options. I think I prefer him more in best ball than I do in a redraft setting. We'll go ahead and get Albert Okwuegbunam off the board here. Now, he's going to be the starting tight end for the Broncos. There's some question marks there at how often he's going to be on the field. It didn't look good in the first preseason game. I'm just hoping that they're just trying to get him, often involved, and hopefully he can be the tight end 1 for the Broncos. But he's a guy I want to be interested in grabbing as my tight end 2, just because you never know. He's a massive guy. He's really fast, and he is Russell Wilson's probably best tight end target. So he's a guy we're taking a shot on as your tight end 2. And then we get to my next tier. And this one's kind of messy. You got Higbee, Fant, Ingram, Hurst, Malik Cox, Austin Hooper, Gerald Everett. We got a ton of guys here that I'm just not quite sure who to take a stab on. Fantasy Pros likes Robert Tonyan, Ingram, Everett, Higbee. I like the Robert Tonyan call. He finally got cleared to practice, but he might still start the season on PUP list, so I'm okay with being a little bit lower on him. I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to put Hayden Hurst up here as the tight end 17. He's been kind of the talk of the Bengals camps. They think they got something there pretty cheap, and he's on a 1-year prove-it deal, so he could be looking to cash in. Last year, you saw CJ Uzomah ranks number 19 as the tight end. He did have a pretty nice season, but he left a lot of yards on the field. 49 receptions, 493 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's kind of the floor, and we're not too far removed. Like, remember back in 2019 or 2020, Hayden Hurst was tight end number 9 for Matt Ryan. He can be a viable tight end option. So don't sleep on Hayden Hurst. He's in the Joe Burrow offense, and all the attention from that defense got to go to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Boyd, and Mixon. So Hurst is one of my preferred number 2 tight ends. If you can get a duo of like Knox and Hurst, I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. Let's go ahead and get I'm going to get Evan Ingram off the board. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Evan Ingram, he's just never turned into anything with the Giants. He did have some nice seasons early in his career, and then he kind of just got lost the last few seasons with the strange coaching staff and just the crappy surroundings of the Giants the last couple of years. I think he kind of got lost. But in Jags camp, he's been pretty consistent. He's been kind of the 3rd or 4th target for Trevor Lawrence. And you got to think, Doug Peterson loves his tight ends. They paid Evan Ingram. I think he's like the 4th or 5th most paid Jag this season. So don't sleep on Ingram. He's a nice tight end 2 target for you. And then let's go ahead and get Tyler Higbee and Noah Fant off the board here. Higbee interests me because after Kupp, after Allen Robinson, they don't really have a clear number 3 target. I don't know if Van Jefferson's going to be ready week 1. He's got a couple of knee injury and surgeries that he's had to deal with. So Higbee could be the number 3 target for Matthew Stafford, which could be pretty fruitful. And then you have to think Noah Fant's going to be the number 3 target. I know it's a low volume passing offense, but Geno Smith, Drew Lock, there's the Drew Lock connection to Noah Fant. But you could see the kind of the backup quarterbacks really lock on to the tight end and make him a part of their focal point. Now we're into the kind of the bottom guys here. Mo Cox is the starting tight end for Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's always been good with tight ends. Austin Hooper, the starting tight end for Ryan Tannehill. There's just a complete lack of wide receiver targets there in Tennessee. So I kind of like Austin Hooper as a sleeper. But I'm going to go ahead and put Gerald Everett up here as a tight end you want to get, because Justin Herbert's always been good throwing the tight end. He could be a guy that they look for often in the red zone, and they've also been mixing him in with some backfield carry stuff. So Everett's a sleeper. We'll go ahead and put Mo Cox and Austin Hooper in there for reasons I mentioned above. And now I want to be higher here on Robert Tonyan. I think if he gets cleared for week 1, I might be willing to change that. We'll see how he reacts to his first time in practice this week. But Tonyan, definitely a sleeper there. If he starts the year on PUP list, you could draft him, put him on your IR, and see what happens. I guess we'll get Mike Gesicki out of the way. I think he's an interesting guy, but he's just not one I'm willing to draft at ADP. But here's a guy that I think could be making some noise this year. And he's low on my rankings, but it's Brevin Jordan. He's a guy that came on strong for the Houston Texans at the end of the year. He's been running with the ones. He had good preseason usage, sticking mainly with the ones, and he was out there for all the passing attempts. So I think Brevin Jordan is one of those guys here who is a deep sleeper. Don't sleep on him. I think he's a guy worth taking at the end of your drafts. And now we get to the point where it's just kind of like, I don't know what to do. I think I need to get Tyler Conklin higher on my list. He's been the kind of the stud breakout for the Jets camp. It seems like almost every other Jets blurb I read is Tyler Conklin is locked in. He's catching a lot of passes, and who knows, with Joe Flacco maybe starting 1, 2, 3, 4 games, that could be a nice boost for a tight end there. And he's well ahead of CJ Uzomah, who they also signed. I'm going to go ahead and throw a couple other just random tight ends in here. We have some young guns, Daniel Bellinger, John Bates, Harrison Bryant. Bellinger is like locked into the Giants starting tight end role. And Kenny Golladay doesn't excite me. Kadarius Toney's always getting hurt. Wan'Dale Robinson is the undersized receiver. Who knows? Maybe Bellinger gets busy with a handful of targets on this offense. I like John Bates because I don't think Logan Thomas is going to be ready for the start of the year. He could be on PUP list, so Bates could be the starting tight end for Carson Wentz. Then we'll add another Cleveland Brown here, Harrison Bryant. He's going to be used heavily in 2 tight end sets, and it sounds like he's having himself a pretty strong camp. Now we get to the bottom list. I have 2 more spots to fill here. Tommy Tremble could be an interesting tight end with Baker Mayfield. I'll go ahead and put him on the list. But then you just have questions. Donald Parham, the number 2 for the Chargers. Jonnu Smith, the number 2, but it sounds like he's been making a lot of plays. I don't trust Cameron Brate as a tight end. Adam Troutman's going to have to compete with Taysom Hill. Greg Dulcich's a rookie to monitor. Foster Moreau, a guy that could be interesting if Waller goes down. But I think I have to give this to Jonnu Smith. They paid him a lot of money last year. And he's been making a lot of plays in camp. I think I saw him like one of the second or third most receptions in Patriots camp this summer. So that is it. That is my rankings. This was a lot of fun. I just completed all my positional rankings: QB, running back, receiver, and tight end. Please check out the videos if you need to check out some of those guys. I'm probably going to update these at some point soon, but I'll get it on the uploaded onto the draft kit. Positional rankings are all done. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good rest of your evening. And yeah, we'll see you in another video. Peace.